Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to give you guys another game review, this time about For Honor. Now, For Honor came out today, but it had a couple closed betas and open beta, or one open beta, and I played a lot in those, and so that's where a lot of these opinions are coming from, but I understand some of these, things kind of changed and stuff like that. So if I accidentally say something that was fixed in the official game, feel free to correct me, because I haven't had enough time to fully test out everything in the full game, but I feel like I've, played the full game enough to understand, kind of what's still wrong with it and what's still, what they fixed and stuff like that. So overall, For Honor is a really fun game, and like I said, I've already played it a ton. I've explored a lot of the characters, a lot of the mechanics, and I feel like I have experienced most of what the game has to offer. Now, the one thing I haven't is I haven't really gotten too much into the campaign, because of the fact that, of course, wasn't in the betas, and, since the game's come out, I've pretty much been focusing on the main issues I had with the game beforehand and kind of seeing what was still messed up and what they fixed and stuff like that. So I haven't played the campaign, but I might make an update video later talking about the campaign. But before I even talk about kind of the pros and cons of the game, I need to talk about one awful thing about this game, and it's the fact that the matchmaking is peer-to-peer. Now, it is 2017, and competitive games should not ever have peer-to-peer servers, and it's clear it's obviously because of the fact that Ubisoft is trying to save money by not having to have dedicated servers. And the thing is Rocket League, as an example, Rocket League of course kind of took off, but it still had dedicated servers even though they are an indie company, and whereas we have a AAA title company that can't have dedicated servers in 2017 is a little ridiculous. And this is definitely one of the games that is obviously having peer-to-peer makes it worse. It's very obvious. It's not like a card game or something like that where it doesn't really matter. This game is something that you need quick time, quick reaction time and stuff like that. So it really matters. And so there's a lot of the times where the game will think someone's not a good enough host anymore, so it'll just change the host, and it will make it'll pause the game for like 5 or 6 seconds, and then it'll like revert the game back to 3 seconds beforehand. So it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it's okay, but like as an example, I was doing 2v2s with some friends. One of my friends was mid-execution of another friend, and the whole the game just decided that someone shouldn't be host, whoever was, I guess, hosting it. It did the whole pausing for 6 seconds, and when we came back, my friend that was being executed had like 1/4 of his health left. There's some ridiculous things like that. So anytime someone leaves, if the game kind of freaks out a lot of the times, and sometimes it just is glitchy and really buggy. So that's something I think they really need to look at and decide if they want to make this game really competitive. That's something they definitely need to do. But that is just kind of one issue, and I know some people are like, oh, I'm not going to buy this game because it's peer-to-peer. I still found it fun enough to enjoy it, even though it had peer-to-peer, but I do want you guys to understand that it is pretty bad. Kind of just jumping straight in, some of the pros that I had is the entire gameplay kind of revolves around this whole, what they call the art of war. And it's pretty much like this: anytime it's a 1v1, you go into this duel mode with someone, and there's kind of 3 stances. You have left, right, and above, and there's all these different things. There's dodges, parries, counters, guard breaks, light and heavy attacks, there's chains, stuns, all of this kind of stuff, but a lot of it revolves around those 3 stances. So if I attack someone from the right, if they can move their stance to the right, and if they do it fast enough they can block it, or if they press it with a right click, it'll counter it and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it works. It's really unique. It makes it actually feel like you're sword fighting someone. You're not just kind of spamming left click and every now and then pressing right click to shove them or something like that, if that makes sense. So it definitely feels pretty balanced in how that gameplay feels. And one of the main things, especially since it is Ubisoft, a lot of people are wondering, is the payment model. And overall, the payment model is decent in my opinion. Of course, it's a AAA title game. It's going to cost $60 at launch. And it's one of those games where you don't have every hero unlock, you have to pay the currency to unlock heroes. But what's good about this game is you can play any hero without having to actually purchase them. The only thing is you can't equip, like, this game has like a gear system. You can't equip any gear to them, and you can't customize them at all if you haven't purchased them. But the one thing is in 1v1s and 2v2s and pretty much any modes except Dominion, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the review, but pretty much any mode except Dominion, gear doesn't affect anything. So it's not real. You're not at fault if you're playing a 1v1 or 2v2 and you're playing a hero that you haven't purchased yet. And of course it is the in-game currency, so it's not very hard to get that to unlock the people, but it's nice that you can play anyone, and that's including new heroes that they make, because on top of that, all future heroes and maps and stuff like that are going to be free. They're probably gonna have to cost the in-game currency, but it's not like you have to pay for DLC to get them or anything like that. Kind of going on to the graphics. The graphics are actually pretty good, and it's decently optimized. So, normally I set my graphics to more around the medium to low side, because of the fact that I try to get 144 FPS in my game, and then record, of course, at 1080p 60 FPS. So it's kind of hard on the computer, so I try to kind of have it medium to low settings, that way I can stay above 144 FPS. And it's pretty easily, like, I can actually have medium everything and normally stay above 144. And some of my friends that I know that have a little worse computers, they're still able to run it pretty well. The one thing is if you ever get under 30 FPS, it kicks you from the game, I guess because it thinks you're at a disadvantage or something like that. So that's one thing to kind of keep note of if you don't have the best of a computer. But of course if you have a console, then it won't matter. And talking about all the heroes and stuff, there's actually a decent amount of content in the game. So in the closed beta and open beta, there were only around 9 classes. In the full game, there's 12, and there's I want to say like 8-ish maps. And what's cool about them is, as an example, so say there's a map and you play it on a 2v2. You might play on one part of the map, whereas if you play in 1v1s, it's like these different little parts around the map. So it's the same map, but they're different kind of parts of the map. So although there's only like 8 or something maps, there's actually a lot more when you count how many areas of the map there actually are that you're fighting on. And the one thing is that all of the heroes actually feel very different. They have different weapons, different abilities, different movesets, so they actually do feel different, which is very nice, especially in a fighting game. You don't want people to feel the same. So those are the main pros I found, and so now we have to kind of go over to the cons. First of all, like I've already said, the servers can be pretty bad, because of the whole peer-to-peer, but I already talked about that, so we can go past that. Second of all, I do feel like there are some small little bugs here and there. A lot of them got fixed from closed to open and then open to launch, and we'll expect a lot of them to be fixed by the time, or in the future. But there are still some bugs that you might find frustrating every now and then and stuff like that. But it's not normally too bad. Now I kind of want to talk about the gear system. So pretty much how it works is, so you have the currency and all of this stuff, and you also get these drops that give you gear, and you can scavenge for new gear and stuff like that. You can buy these packs that have gear, and pretty much what they do is they look different, but they also give you different stats. And the one thing about this is it doesn't affect like the game modes like 1v1s and 2v2s and stuff like that, which is really good, because if there were stat changing anything in those main game modes, I feel like the game would definitely suffer. It pretty much only applies to Dominion, the game mode. In fact, a lot of the stuff only applies to Dominion. So you have these feats of stuff as well that you get like once you level up in game and stuff like that, and out of game, once you level your character up, you can unlock new feats to kind of mess around with. But a lot of the stuff only applies to Dominion, and it feels like they don't really know what they want their main game mode to be. A lot of the times, most games, they have a clear-cut competitive game mode. That's what's going to be in tournaments. But this, I don't know if they're going to try to make Dominion the official game mode, or 1v1s or 2v2s or what. but there's a lot of content in the game that has to do with Dominion, and I personally found the Dominion mode lacking, very lacking, because there's so much of so much of the gameplay is revolved around this 1v1, kind of duel mode, art of war, parrying and all of this stuff. So when you factor in all of these people around each other and all the creeps in the middle of the map, it gets kind of awkward and clunky, and I'm not too big of a fan of it. I'm definitely a fan of the 1v1s and 2v2s and stuff like that. And especially since the whole gear system only applies to the Dominion, it feels like there's a huge chunk of the game that I won't really access because of the fact that I don't play too much Dominion. And I'm not saying I want the gear and feats in 1v1s and 2v2s. I don't. You can use the gear on your characters to make them look a little bit different, but I'm not saying I want stat changes in 1v1s and 2v2s. I'm just saying that because a lot of the stuff is based off of Dominion, I do feel like I'm getting a little bit screwed by not enjoying it that much. And on top of talking about a lot of the game modes, because there's so many game modes, I feel like it's going to be really hard to balance the heroes. Because as of right now, the heroes are actually decently balanced. You have some heroes that are obviously stronger than others, and you have some heroes that are a little bit weaker than others. But it's overall balanced. I don't think anyone's too overpowered or underpowered. But, of course, through time, people are going to find these combos and stuff like that, and there probably will be a clear-cut, meta of heroes. The thing is one hero might be really, really good in Dominion, but might be awful in 1v1s. And I feel like it's going to be pretty hard to balance people with all of the different game modes that we have. Is it, are they going to be good in Deathmatch, the 4v4 Deathmatch, but awful in this? So if they're awful in this one game mode, but OP in this other game mode, how do you balance around that? Are you just going to try to pick the most played game mode and balance them around that, because then you're going to make a large portion of players unhappy. Because I know if some heroes get balanced and like they get nerfed in 1v1, or they get nerfed because they're strong in Dominion, that might make me a little bit upset. But so that's going to be definitely a struggle. They might be able to work through it, I don't know, but that just feels like it's going to be a challenge for them. One kind of small thing, is just kind of my opinion, is that the game tries to focus especially, not only on 1v1s, but on, like, say, 2v1s, and all this kind of stuff like that. Or even 3v1s and 4v1s if you're playing the game modes that are 4v4. And the one problem with that is it's really, really awkward to actually verse other multiple opponents, because the whole point is you're going in duel mode with a single person, and there's a button to switch targets, but it makes it really hard. It just feels awkward and very, very difficult to fight multiple enemies. And I know that's kind of the point, but it feels almost impossible unless you're playing certain heroes. But yeah, so that's pretty much my kind of little review of For Honor. I overall really, really enjoy it. I think it's a great game. And I personally am kind of more interested in the 1v1, 2v2 sides of the game, but I think all the other game modes are pretty interesting. But I think the game's really fun, and it's definitely worth purchasing if you have the money. But yeah, so that was just, my review. If you guys enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content and news. And like always, guys, see you next time.